imparting knowledge without the fear that this person might one day become better than you. If they are, that's okay.
Isn't that great?
Isn't that great?
Isn't that great?
That's your stamp on that.
I can rest.
Exactly. I think that's the main problem, where we want to train people only to the extent that they can help our individual practices.
But not be better.
Outside of us. And that's a big problem. It holds all of us back because we're only so good while we're there.
Welcome to another episode of Sisters in Conversation. I'm your host, Tebelo Moswane. I'm an attorney by profession and the founder of Sister in Law, which is a platform dedicated to empowering women through legal education. On today's episode, I'm joined by Zama Ngcobo, who is an award-winning entrepreneur, an award-winning law firm managing partner. She is the founder and managing partner of WMN Attorneys, which specializes mainly in construction law. And I'm very excited to have her on today's episode. I've been chasing her down for quite some time. Zama, thank you. Thank you for finally.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for chasing me. I'm a huge fan of your work, and I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you for the lovely intro as well.
Thank you for honoring today's invitation. I'm excited to have you. It's been a long 2 years, but I'm glad I managed to finally bully you into agreeing, and I'm glad that our schedules allowed, because I know there was a lot of you're a busy woman, busy winning awards, busy building an award-winning law firm. So thank you so much for making time to come and share your journey with us.
I appreciate your patience with me.
Look, better late than never. That's what I say. And season 5 is a brilliant season to, feature on the show, because it shows that at least there's been some consistency, you know. And having you here is part of the building blocks of this podcast. And I've actually never had someone who specializes in construction. So this is going to be new for the listeners. So I'm very excited to hear what you have to say.
Interesting. I'm happy to be here. Let's go.
All right, let's take it to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about Zama. What was your childhood like, your upbringing, primary school life, high school life?
Okay, so I grew up in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, in a very close-knit family, nuclear family, mom and dad, brothers. For the longest time, I was the only girl and the youngest. So that princess energy they talk about comes very naturally to me. I went to the closest schools. In the context of South Africa, I'd say my upbringing was privileged for a black person. Yeah. So I went to good schools, lived in the suburbs, but always the closest school to the area. I know that you interviewed Ngcobo, who was at Weber's. Her and I went to the same primary school, I heard from her interview. Oh. Lyndhurst, yeah. And then I matriculated from Durban Girls High, which I think that's the place where my feminism was born. Durban Girls High, they taught us to be ladies, but that ladies must take themselves seriously because you have a future and, you should be taken seriously. That was the message. And from Durban Girls High to UKZN and to Joburg.
How was your high school life? I can assume that you built a sisterhood because you were at a girls' school. How was it? Did you ever wonder what a co-ed school would have been like?
Funny enough, I went to 3 different high schools because we moved around a lot. So I actually went to a girls' high and Pinetown Girls' High, which was the same school Ngcobo went to. And then I moved to a co-ed school because my mom got a job somewhere, so I moved with her. And then we went to Durban Girls High in grade 10, so the family came back together to live together when my mom got a job back in Durban. So I went to a co-ed school, went to a girls' school. I prefer the girls' school.
Yeah.
I think girls are less focused in co-ed schools because they get distracted by the boys. So, and I think, there's definitely a sisterhood that is created at a girls' school, which I quite enjoyed.
And with the moving around, was it not difficult to make friends, or are you still friends with some of the people from the previous high schools before you matriculated at Durban Girls?
I think social media has made it a bit easier to maintain connections. Yeah. And because of that period in my life, I think that's why I'm actually so social and have the ability to make friends quickly because I had to survive. I mean, imagine going to 3 different schools from 3 different years.
Yeah,
know, 4 if you count the fact that one was from grade 7 to high school. So that developed a social skill in me, which I don't.
So you don't struggle with like you're adaptable.
I'm adaptable. Very much.
I love that, and flexible.
I don't like change, funny enough, but if it happens to me, I'll adapt.
You're able to adapt.
Yeah.
Yes. And then, what inspired you to pursue law? Like, were you inspired by someone in your family, or?
Several things, right? I think the first thing that triggered an interest in law was a John Grisham novel. I'm sure a lot of lawyers have that experience. A Time to Kill. So in that book, it was a courtroom drama that investigated what is justice. And that was the first time I thought about, okay, well, if something is unfair, what is true justice in the context of this? And the facts of the case are interesting. I'll let you guys read it for yourself, or watch a movie. There's a movie about it with Sandra Bullock, Samuel L. Jackson, Matthew McConaughey. Anyway, that is the first taste. That was in grade 8. So I thought, this is an interesting profession. This is a tool to right wrongs. I like that.
I love that. As early as grade 8, was it one of the books that you had to read?
No, I was an avid reader. I think I read like 30 books a year. I was just for fun. I was a bit of a nerd. But no, we didn't have to read it. I just read it. I still have it at home. And then in grade 9, we had to take life orientation. And there was a test that we had to take that would determine what career path you're best suited for. Mine said 99% suitable for the law.
Okay, I love that.
And I said, okay, interesting. At the time, I still hadn't decided. I think my primary school best friend and I wanted to be actresses. Something ridiculous. No, it's not that being an actress is ridiculous. We are not talented, so that's... or at least I'm
Number
not.
one.
And then I think a few other events in my life kind of pushed me towards the law and interest in it, including some family members. I have a cousin, Tandi Kuzwayo, who is just stunning and, makes being a lawyer look really cute.
I love it. Yeah, and I'll pin her down for the next season. Please.
And so, other people in my life. And I think what sealed the deal then was in matric, we had a career day. And one of the lecturers from UKZN came through to tell us about the law and UKZN. His name was Dumile Paqo. Anyone who went to UKZN during his time would know him. He was just so charismatic.
Brilliant.
He might still be there. Brilliant guy. And so he sealed it for me, and I went to go study law at UKZN.
And how was your experience on campus? Were you those people, head down the whole time, or were you a member of a few societies? Were you outgoing?
I'm ashamed.
Were you staying at home?
Now that I'm on the other side and I see people's CVs, I'm so ashamed of it. I was just having fun and just... but always, my father was the dean of students at the campus that I went to.
Okay.
So he would get my results before I did. So that pushed me to, as much as I was out and about, having a good time, I always made sure that I get my act together for my results.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, thank you, Dad.
I really appreciate the outgoing, personas that we had in varsity, because it was a lot. It was a lot. And I'm glad that we were able to multitask. We took that for granted. That's where the power of multitasking started,
Absolutely.
Having a fun night out and then making a commitment that Saturday is for the books, then Saturday you get straight into it. So I like that.
Yeah, that's where we honed the work-life balance. If you didn't get it, then you're going to struggle.
Then you're going to struggle. So apart from that, you were not like a member of any societies, those student sort of councils or whatever?
Not necessarily. I mean, there was the Black Lawyers Association at school. My friends were part of it. No, I wouldn't say that I was. More of a bookworm. And if I'm not in my books, I'm out.
Social. Yeah.
I think I definitely didn't... I wish I was more mature about it. I wish I was part of those things. It's such a good opportunity that was missed.
Did you have any part-time jobs at all? Were you volunteering somewhere?
Only in December, I'd volunteer at the university's applications office.
Okay, great. So that was something you had to apply for?
That was something my dad helped with.
Excuse me. Okay.
When I proposed taking a gap year, he was like, no, I've got a job.
I've got a job for you. Thanks, Dad, again.
Thanks, Dad.
All right. And then when did you become aware of the avenues that existed for you once you'd be done with your degree? How did you know that you want to do articles? Did you do any VAC work in your third or fourth year?
Yes, so I did VAC work, and I started being alive to the fact that I need to get a job in my third year. Well, some of my friends were signed in the second year and everything, so I started getting VAC work in third year. I got at Bowman's and at ENS, and fortunately, ENS was supposed to be an interview, and then it ended up being, I ended up getting invited to VAC work. And I think I do better in person anyway. So that's how I sealed the deal, notwithstanding that I was probably the only person who was not a cum laude student.
Yeah. I like that. I like that we must push that narrative sometimes because it's not impossible to get a job or even land, you know, in a top 5 firm if you're not a distinctions achiever. You can still try.
Absolutely. And
your charisma sometimes pulls through for you.
I was about to say people skills are a big part of the job. Yeah. So I think that's important to look into and not just the results.
Yeah. So then how did you then make the decision that, okay, you definitely want to pursue being an attorney and, for example, not a graduate program at a bank or a company and not an advocate?
I mean, I didn't even really think that far. I was one of those who just thought after school you go be an attorney and get admitted and then decide from there. So for me, it was just quite clear that's what you do.
And where did you end up doing your articles?
I ended up at ENS.
And how was the transition from varsity to articles, and the transition from, you know, being a Durban girl your whole life and then moving to, you know, the big bad, hectic Joburg city?
I was so excited to get my independence.
Yeah. Did you stay at home during varsity?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Home was always down the road from everywhere.
Yeah.
From high school, from primary school, from varsity.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. I mean, not sure about that one. But when I moved to Joburg, my parents' version of independence as the little baby girl was me living with my brother.
Okay.
So I lived with him for a while, up until I got promoted to senior associate, at which point people in my firm were like, listen, move out of your brother's place.
It's time. Okay, that's interesting, because one of the questions that I was also going to ask was, you know, how did you manage the excitement of those first few salaries and then, you know, matching it up to the expenses? But if you stayed with your brother, it wasn't a shocker. Like, you were not now parting with 8K for rent and all of that.
I mean, funny enough at all. And we had a family discussion about it, and the agreement to that I'd live for free during articles because, you're
just a baby.
I'm just a baby.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. And then he saw my pay slip and he was like, what? Nah. You fraud.
He was like, no, you got to earn your keep.
No, we're going half on everything. How could you? And I was like, I don't know.
What was he doing by your pay slip? Men must not come anywhere
He was helping me look for a car, so he had access to things.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and actually, when you are buying your first car, I think it is important to have a male perspective.
Absolutely.
These dealerships will dribble you if they see you're a young girl, you're not, knowledgeable in that field.
And I was not.
Yeah,
I was just like, what color does it come in?
Does it go forward? Can it go forward? Yeah, that's all you're invested in, you know. So, big ups to Big Brother for helping you with that process. So you had a fairly easy-ish transition with managing your finances until you finally moved out. You moved out when you were a senior associate.
Imagine.
And during your associate years, he just still let you coast.
We were cool.
I like your brother.
I was helping out with the girls,
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And what was your experience like during articles? What were some of the departments that you rotated in, if you had the option to rotate?
So, funny enough, I always wanted to end up in an area of law that was unique. So when I was in varsity, Dad and I decided that I'm going to be a maritime lawyer.
Oh, I love it.
Because the only maritime lawyer I knew was the black female lecturer who taught me maritime law. And I was like, wow, I want to be her. Her name was Porson Law. She's now doing maritime law things all the way in Boston, Massachusetts. So I said, I want to be like her. And then I go to start articles, and I was placed in the litigation department in a team that does construction at a point where I didn't even know that construction law was a thing that existed.
I love it.
So I was like, okay, let's do this. And fortunately, the team that I was in, while in litigation, did both agreements and disputes. So I got both sides of construction law, the disputes and the contracts. And by the time I was done, we did not rotate in that firm unless you really, really need to. I mean, there's no rotation policy.
Yeah, okay.
And so by the time I was done with my 2 years of articles, I was like, well, okay, I enjoy this. And now I'm ahead of a lot of my peers who want to become construction lawyers. And this was at a time where there were very, very few black construction lawyers.
Yes,
so I think that's also why I stood out.
Yeah, so you just continued on that trajectory until senior associate. You left the firm when you were a senior.
Yes.
And what propelled that decision?
I just wanted to see what was more out there. You know, I was not satisfied I think I'd gotten to a point where I was no longer satisfied in the environment that I was in. And then I got headhunted by Weber Winsell. Then I went to Weber Winsell for a year, and then an international law firm came through, establishing itself in South Africa and saying that it wants to represent the demographic of South Africa. And so they want to be the black-owned international law firm, and that was Denton's. So I went to Denton's for a bit, and then after Denton's, decided to go off and do a little bit of my own thing.
And how did you get to a little bit? Like, what was the final push that you needed to say, I want to start my own thing? And which year was this?
Yeah, the law firm tour is what we call going from law firm to law firm, because you're not finding maybe your place or the right environment for you. So after doing the law firm tour and learning a lot and realizing, you know, what I believe the problems to be for me, in 2021, I then started WMN Attorneys, and that was basically my response to what I felt was not right about the environments that I had been in. So just trying to do things very differently from the way that things were done.
And what are some of the examples, 2 or 3 examples of the things that you're just like, I want to do this differently, and let me just, you know, gather up the courage to attempt to do things differently?
So the main thing was seeing so many women that I look up to leaving the profession at a certain level.
Yes.
So senior associate, first year of director, they go in-house, you know, and then I'm like, what's
going on?
You know, and then the more I start investigating, the more I realize people want to start families, and this environment is not right for it. And I'm like, why? Okay, for example, when you go on maternity leave, you have to leave your practice behind. And this cutthroat environment, you'll come back and you have to start afresh.
Zero.
You know what I mean? And why does it have to be like that? So I think these environments foster internal competition a lot more than they do collaboration. And I think that becomes a problem, especially for women who then have to leave this competitive environment for a bit, every now and again. You know?
Every now and then.
Yeah, so that's the main thing that I saw, that it's not a safe space for women, and it's not collaborative as it should be.
Sure, yeah.
And then another thing was, the treating of people like commodities. Now I understand I'm on the other side, guys. The bottom line is the bottom line. I understand it a little bit better than I did as a junior. But I definitely think there's something that needs to be done about how we deal with people.
Yeah, just the human.
Let's bring back the human aspect of it. You know, at the end of the day, these aren't just people. This is someone who is the first person in their family to go to university. This is the first person in the family to be part of a profession, and by destroying their confidence for whatever reason, you're not just destroying their confidence, you're destroying a bloodline's possibility of change, you know. There's so much that you're destroying. So that being said, I mean, I get it. Toxic people exist, which means there are toxic bosses and toxic employees. So I get it, but I just think that we need to be more active about, you know, creating a safe space.
You mentioned that you were basically practicing in a department, or rather in a legal space that really didn't have a lot of black women at the time. I can imagine that things have changed slightly, but what can we continue doing in our little spaces to ensure that transformation, especially at big law firms, isn't just lip service, and that Zama's not just being placed there for aesthetics or to paint a picture that we are transforming? What are some of the practical things that maybe even as black women we can do in our spaces to continue ensuring that transformation isn't lip service and that we're actually living it?
I think it just goes down to the basic human element, that imparting knowledge without the fear that this person might one day become better than you. If they are, that's okay.
Isn't that great?
Isn't that great? That's your stamp on that.
I can rest.
Exactly. I think that's the main problem, where we want to train people only to the extent that they can help our individual practices.
But not be better.
Outside of us. And that's a big problem. It holds all of us back, because we're only so good while we're there. When we're not there, we're something else now. And then we have to rebuild our names.
And then some of the conversations, obviously, we can't just, you know, do everything as women to empower ourselves. But you mentioned your lecturer. I think you said his name was Duma. You've also mentioned your brother. You've also mentioned your dad, who I think those are men who have played a crucial role in empowering you as a woman. Do you have any men in the profession as well that have been able to make you see a side of you that you didn't think existed, and they've just really been able to assist you hone those skills or whatever, just put you in rooms that you didn't imagine yourself in?
Absolutely. I would say my clients, it's a male-dominated industry, so more often than not, it's men who have briefed me, and it's men who continue to support me, and it's men who recommend me to others in the industry. So definitely my clients, for them to entrust me with such big deals, such a little black girl.
And small girl,
big God, and big support. I'm so grateful for them putting me on like that. And I think my first boss was a male, actually, Armando at ENS, and he had a wife and daughters, and I just remember being a person who suffered from cramps back in the day, even sometimes now. And he came into my office the one time and was like, "What's wrong? Why's your face like that?"
You look sick. And
and I was like, I'm not feeling okay. And he's like, "What's wrong? I've got cramps." He's like, "What are you doing here? Go home." He understood what that meant. And I have not had any issues with any boss in relation to that in my career. But when I then started WMN Attorneys, I thought about the women that may have had issues. And that's why I then started this, implemented a paid menstrual leave policy for people who have debilitating cramps. So I think
I love that.
So
does WMN stand for women?
Or it's WMN Winimbali. So my names, but colloquially, in the formal legal environment, WMN, but colloquially, women attorneys.
I love that. I love that. And how has it been building a practice? Maybe let's speak specifically. Let me speak specifically on the nuances of being a boss. Wanting to obviously do things differently. Like you said earlier, you wanted to do things differently. But also managing people is not an easy task, right? And just how do you deal with, people, setting up a team, ensuring that they do sometimes take things seriously. And I know with us sometimes we can be, friendly because it's who we are, right? But sometimes you have to balance the friendliness with a little bit of discipline, with a little bit of mean girl energy. So how do you navigate that?
Okay, well, managing people is one thing. Managing lawyers is another monster altogether. But I just have to be okay with the fact that people are going to call me names. Like, it is what it is. If a man is being assertive, he's not going to be called anything. If I am, I'm going to be called a toxic boss, and I have to be okay with that. That's where we are. There's nothing that I can do to change that. I still need to run a tight ship, So people will call you names, and I've heard so many over the years, just in terms of if you're a woman that cares about your appearance, now you're a bimbo. If you're this, now you're that. Now you're this. So it's always going to be there. I think even the women that we look up to, who are all the way at the top, I'm sure she has stereotypes she deals with in the big rooms that she sits in. So I think just accepting that it's not going to change in my lifetime, and just having to...
So basically not taking things personally,
Not taking things personally is exactly it. I used to take things so personally.
And you get home and you're fired up and I think it really takes a level of self-awareness as well to realize that you are not necessarily the problem. And I also think that we really are in a culture where sometimes we use the word toxic loosely, right? Especially with this new generation. I find that they are... There's sometimes it takes a lot of convincing to get them to work hard. And now when you are being assertive about you need to work hard, then that's where they start with the toxic. But Absolutely. You're not toxic. I just need the work to be done.
Dude, you don't understand that this is a multi-million rand deal. You don't get that. Yeah. I get that.
Yes.
And I need to make you get it. And if I raise my voice in the process of making you get it, so be it. If you want to call me toxic, call me what you want. So it is what it is.
And also, at the end of the day, life is a balance. Like when it's time to work hard, we must work hard. And the time to play hard will be there. And I'm sure you know those bosses who were speaking offline about Friday after work drinks, just to keep things exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm a huge believer in the work-life balance. I've tried to live it my whole life. But even the term itself, work-life balance, which means work comes before life, so that you may have a balance.
Okay.
Full stop.
I love that. Drops mic. Yeah. And then how do you just keep your team energized and inspired? We were talking about that slump that comes at the end of the year, like now, this last quarter. What are some of the practical things that you do to keep your team energized?
So, I'm also open to what the team wants. I'm a big believer in people's love languages and learning them so that everyone can be happy. Of course, as the team grows, I'm not going to know every single person's love language. But if someone comes to me and says, "Listen, Zama, things are really, the team is so tired, we've been working really hard. Do you mind if we do this? No, how much is it going to cost me? Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, best things first.
You know, and if we're good, then we're good. So it's just giving them what they want, keep making sure that they stay happy. And, you know, the little girly things. On Women's Day, we had a makeup artist come through and show us how to do a little face bead for those speaking engagements.
Yeah.
And then we had financial advisors come and tell us how to build our wealth. So small things like that. And mental health, International Mental Health Day, we had a mental health company come through and teach us breathing exercises and mat exercises and teach us the science behind stress and mental health. So it's all those things that I'm trying to build well-rounded lawyers, because this is life information as well. Doing your face, you need to just for life. When we have team building events, we'll go for cooking classes, because you know what, male or female, everybody needs to know how to cook.
Yeah.
So just trying to build well-rounded lawyers.
And what is your staff complement like? I mean, understanding that colloquially it's women attorneys, but what is the staff complement like?
We've only got 2 guys now in the firm. Well, 1 guy also work part-time guys. Everyone who's full-time is a woman.
Okay.
And last year I did hire some guys, but I found that these guys came and created a boys' club in the firm. I think that was the universe's way of reminding me why I started the firm, that this was supposed to be a safe space by women, for women. And so that encouraged me to go back to my vision and tighten things up and make it a safer space for women. That's not to say I discriminate against men or will do so going forward, just that now I realize they can't even help themselves with starting a boys' club. Wherever they see each other, they just gravitate.
Yeah.
So now
I think that's what they call unconscious bias.
Unconscious bias, you know, yawn.
So, you know, you are a managing partner at an award-winning firm, right? Construction. What does a typical transaction look like? Just for, you know, that person who's listening and it's the first time they hear of construction, and I did say it's the first time we have a construction practitioner, legal practitioner. What do typical transactions look like? What does the day in the life of Zama look like?
Well, every day is different, definitely now that I'm a managing partner as well. And with construction, one thing I can guarantee you is that you'll never get bored. There's always, it's so different. Every project is different. Someone asked me the other day, what do I specialize in the construction sector? And I was like, what? I do it all. And I guess some people will say, I develop mines and mines only. Or power stations and power stations only. So I do it all, and we'll basically hold your hand from the time that you're planning the project, deciding where it's going to be, how big it's going to be, what you're doing. We're holding your hand, because at that stage you're also signing agreements. There'll be professional service service providers that you'll need to consult with, who will be helping you conceptualize the project. So we're involved from that stage. We'll help you put together the tender once you've conceptualized your project, and now you want to get a contractor on board. And if you're the contractor, we'll help you respond to the tender that you want to be on board for. And then when the tender's been awarded, we'll help you negotiate the contract up until you sign it. Once the contract is signed, we'll hold your hand throughout the project. As you're building, there will be certain things that happen on site. Maybe someone was supposed to do this by a certain date and didn't. What are the consequences of that? So all of that will be holding your hand and helping you respond to correspondence and helping you respond to claims that are issued. If a dispute arises, we hold your hand through that as well.
Okay, love it. And that comes back to, in your early years when you're doing your articles, you did say that there was a little bit of, there was both the contract side and the litigation side. So you're pretty comfortable with both sides of the coin.
Absolutely. Very
I love that. I love that. And how do you then balance, how do you balance removing yourself from always doing the work, like physically doing the work, to also realizing that you are running a business and you're trying to scale the business? How do you balance that, the legal practitioner versus the entrepreneur side of Zama?
So it's very difficult because you have to trust your people.
Yeah.
It's very
You need to
difficult.
trust that when you're not physically there, the work is still going to be done and done properly.
Absolutely, to the quality that you require. So I try by all means to make sure that everything that goes out I've looked at. But of course, that's not always possible. Yeah. And the people that I have hired in my team are people who are experienced. It's not... only people who needed a chance or something. It's actually people who've been at the big firms, people who can run matters, people with decent salaries, which makes my life so much more stressful. But they help me out in that regard so much because they know what they're doing and they know when to ask for help. They're humble enough to know when to ask for help. That's another thing about lawyers. We get very arrogant, and I've seen it with junior lawyers. I was raised or trained with the sink or swim model. So you're given something, do it. And I was like, whoa, what? And then you do it, and if you do it well, you get more of that.
Yes. But sometimes you can make mistakes.
Yes.
And you need to ask questions.
Yes, and I wasn't always given the opportunity to go and ask if I don't know what to do next, then I'm stupid now, you know, which, on the other hand, lawyers won't want to, arrogant lawyers whose egos are too healthy will then not even realize that they don't know. They just think they know. They don't know what they don't know. And they're just going through this thing and giving legal advice without even knowing. You know, it's stressful. But I have, before I can trust you with me, you sending stuff out without me looking at it, we have to work together closely for some time. I have to see the quality of your work and then I can send you off.
Yeah. No, I think also just being the boss sometimes is challenging because someone will come and ask you a question and you're like, are you asking me?
You don't think?
Why don't you like?
So I've had
and now you're looking around for the senior. You're like, why don't?
So I do that. I'm like, please ask the senior associate.
Yeah.
Also, they must get used to. Let's see, now it's your job to train people. Now, you know, I'm not training you guys to be my partners one day. Now you must train them to be. And
have you ever had to fire someone?
Let's call it a mutual separation.
Or just decide to go your separate ways.
I literally just had a big revamp of my firm recently because of, as I said, the boys' club, and it's very toxic when you're.
And how do you initiate those conversations?
You know, the universe is so on my side. It usually initiates itself.
You like, you can see where we are.
You can see, man. Let's just sit down and see how we. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think. It's not nice at all having to separate with people, especially because it's never for a good reason.
I mean, even in our personal relationships, right? It's never easy, actually, you know, having to separate with a friend or a romantic partner. So I can imagine that it's also not necessarily the easiest thing to do in a professional setting.
Yeah, so I leave it up to our HR for the most part.
Okay, good. And let's talk about the awards and... how do you handle that? And isn't it beautiful and affirming? But how do you just handle the fame, if I can put it that way?
That's not what it is.
Or the recognition, the excitement of the recognition, yes.
Oh, I mean... At the end of the day, I'm always reminded that that's not your job, right? I can be sitting there with a nice interview after doing my glam, and then an email comes in, an urgent instruction. This job is very humbling. So I'm always reminded, go to your desk. But if I had to give you some context, when I started the firm in 2021 in January, I had a good client base, and we were busy. So I felt like if I market myself right now and more people come, I'm not going to manage. So let me just keep quiet. For the first year and a half, I kept quiet. And after, I think maybe May of the second year, a year and a half into it, then I started creating a social media account, updated my LinkedIn, because then I had built a team.
Some capacity.
Yes. And then the Verve Awards came then the year late after that, once I had a team and everything. And so being able to then run off and be in interviews while the team is working helped. The fact that, someone was back at the ranch handling things. And it's been great for business development.
Yes.
I see it as a networking opportunity rather than a fame thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm happy about the doors it's gotten me into. I'm so grateful to work with Co. But my job is not to be a celebrity. My job is a lawyer. And I must use this platform to further my legal agenda. That's how I choose to look at it.
I love that. It's also just a great place to network, which is something we really need in this space. Because the clients, actually, I always say, even when we are working on our social media pages, that's not necessarily where the bread and butter is, right? The clients are actually in the interpersonal networking that we do.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And I think the nice thing about Verve is that it was very feminine, right? So a lot of the events were also very feminine driven, and a lot of... One thing I've noticed over the years, when a black woman in particular, likes their appearance, maybe has a long weave, nice and curly and whatnot, then people will classify you now you're a slay queen, now you're this.
Yeah,
but in these spaces where we all care about our appearance and we're all boss ladies, it's nice, and that argument falls away and that narrative falls away. So that's
also
what I've enjoyed the most.
Also because we're really just good at what we do.
Absolutely. Now we can just talk about that as opposed to this one is wearing that and looks like
it helps that we're just good at what we do.
It helps. And you're already, even the women who come to those things, you already can tell this is a woman who will stand up or get up on a Saturday morning to come and build their life. So already you're networking amongst people who are focused. So it's really great.
And over the years, 1 or 2 career highlights, like where you know, looked in the mirror and said, girl, you're the girl you think you are. Can you tell us about that? Like, what was that affirming thing for you where you were just like, Zama, you're really good at what you do, and you actually took time to, you know, stand out of yourself and celebrate that?
No, definitely starting the firm in 2021, having my clients come with me was affirming. And then having in my mind that I want to create this new thing that is different from everything else, and having the market validate that I'm doing that, and it's amazing. Through the Verve Clico Awards was the big one. I mean, I think the big thing about Verve is that they want women to have visibility. So that's what they did. They give you a PR team and they let you shine.
Yeah. And, I think the other day you were like, ish, that contract with the PR team is coming to an end. But at least you've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. And they still have your back. If they see an opportunity that would be good for you, they still plug so you're part of this community now forever and ever, and they're always trying to help you. So I think that was the biggest thing. And then recently being shortlisted, we've been shortlisted for African Legal Awards every year since we started marketing ourselves. So that's been great. And this year we were shortlisted for Southern African Law Firm of the Year, alongside your Bowmans, your Weber Wensels, your Norton Roses, and some of my people went to those firms. So it was very, very validating for them to,
yes, competing with the big boys.
Yeah, because I can imagine that sometimes if you leave the big firm and go to a small firm, it feels like a downgrade in your CV. But here you are, if that firm is ranked up against the best, then and you're doing projects. That are of this magnitude.
Sure, thank you for sharing that with us. And obviously, we can't touch on the good without touching on the bad. So, what was the moment where you were like, I'm not getting out of bed today? Or what are some of the challenges that you have encountered, whether when you were, in practice under another firm or running your own firm? What were some of the big challenges where you were just like, why am I even in this practice? Why am I in law?
So I mean, the challenges are the challenges, and there can be different facts that stem from the same challenge. Yeah. The main challenge is not being taken seriously, and can go all day listing examples of that. But it's definitely having to then find it in yourself to maintain your cool, number one, and to continue being polite in the face of rudeness, which is what is expected of us. So I think that's really, really challenging, and continuing to have faith in yourself when, the world is telling you not to. I think that's the biggest thing. And the individual stories matter less than that actual not taking people seriously.
That's so true. Sure. And what do you do as an individual to slow down?
I take breaks frequently.
Okay.
Yeah. I used to be the person, I was telling you just before that, I used to be the person that takes vacations in October just to ease
into that end of the year.
So now I take breaks frequently. If there's a random Monday where nothing is pressing, I will just rest and lie down.
Where there are no fires, ne?
Because now it's so much harder than just practicing law. Now it's building a practice, maintaining a practice, training the juniors, hiring more people, building a firm, the financials. It's so much. And I have to be kind to myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And have you figured out what the next 3 to 5 years are looking like for the practice, or even for yourself as an individual in the construction industry?
So funny enough, I always say that your mentees will end up mentoring you. One of my mentees, Zuleika, is adamant that I'm an activist.
Okay.
And I'm like, I'm an attorney, honey.
Yes.
But
she's like, you can be both.
Yeah. So I think tapping into that feminism, activism over the past, through WMN, has made me realize that, that's exactly what I am, and I'd like to tap into that a little bit more, fly the flag for women a little bit harder. I want to expand into, just have more of a presence in Africa, share expertise, empower more women to be construction lawyers all over Africa. Let's build this thing. And that's the thing that's why I feel like I'm in the right place with construction law, because I feel like at heart I'm a builder. So I mean, when you look at a building and you say we contributed to that, you really feel like you're building a nation. And so just through WMN, I want to take it all the way and just build people as best I can.
Sure, thank you so much. That was very, very empowering. Lovely to learn more about you. This is exciting. Thank you. As we come to the end of our conversation, is there anything that you'd like to share with us that I haven't asked you, or just words of motivation for somebody who's in their 3rd or 4th year and they're just feeling like, no. Or someone who's in a toxic environment, in a toxic law firm where they are just wondering, like, what am I doing here and what's next for me?
I mean, just the practice of law is a beautiful thing. This profession is a very esteemed one. And do not let people tell you who you are not. Keep pushing. If you feel that you are supposed to be a lawyer, and do not be deterred. I know people who've left toxic environments and left the practice of law altogether.
Sure, yeah.
You know, so do not be deterred. Keep going. And I, at some point, thought maybe this is too hard. Like, come on. You know, so don't be deterred. If you can read my story and be inspired, I'm glad. Yeah. And the second thing is just to thank you. I think it's important for women to tell their stories through their own voices, because when other people tell our stories,
they leave out some issues.
Absolutely.
They leave out the nuggets.
Absolutely. They are riddled with inconsistencies and all sorts of things, because, you know, we're not supposed to be these women of power that Male Guardian says
and that's the purpose of this podcast, for us to celebrate especially Black women in the profession, because for a very long time our voices haven't really been heard or amplified to the level that they need to be amplified. So that's exactly what this podcast is about specifically.
I'm a huge fan of your work.
Thank you.
I've seen some women that I look up to on this very couch. So keep it going, man.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for having this conversation with us. But before I let you go, is there anything that you'd like to see change in the legal profession as a whole?
I think I've touched on this earlier about the treating people like commodities.
Okay, yes.
The collaboration over competition. And the creating safe space for women. Why did I have to go and start a law firm? Why couldn't there have been safe spaces in those environments? So I think let's just be better, man.
And also something that you had mentioned earlier, which I thought was very important, was just that spirit of collaboration. Sometimes I find myself in a position where, someone will ask me, okay, maybe someone who's not in the profession will ask, but why are you always posting WMN Attorneys? You're an attorney yourself. And the truth is, I'm not jumping out of intellectual property or family law to go and head a construction project or whatever, So there's absolutely...
I lose nothing from lifting up another person.
I lose nothing, because in any event, Zama's client is going to be going through a divorce and Zama's going to give the work back to me. Do you get it? So collaboration. I lose nothing from that. So I think that's an important word that I wanted to highlight, that you mentioned earlier.
No, it's definitely important. I mean, for us, we are people who love to give back, but we're also very pragmatic. We are attorneys who sell our time. So we collaborate with NPOs like Dare to Change, like Ubuntu, who care about giving back and whose job it is to give back, whose mandate it is. And then we empower them either with legal services, with financial aid, with our people, or whatever
resources.
With people resources, whatever they need. So collaboration.
I love that. And I think that is exactly where I'm going to leave it for today. I cannot wait to see you on this couch in 3 to 5 years and hear about all the activism that you've been doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Zuleika, for that. Thank you so much, Zama. It was such a pleasure learning from you today, and I am sure you have positively impacted one listener's life today through just sharing your story, and I celebrate you.
Thank you for the platform, and we all celebrate you.
Thank you. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to share it with your loved ones. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also follow the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you're specifically listening on Apple Podcasts, please don't forget to leave a review. That small, insignificant act goes a long way in creating awareness of this show. Until next time, goodbye.